Every great performance begins with one thing: practice. But getting practice right takes more than just repetition. It's about purpose, preparation, and progress. In this episode, we dive deep into the art of coaching and how to make each practice count on the path to becoming a great athlete. We'll explore innovative techniques to keep athletes engaged, balancing skill and development with gameplay, and the importance of creating an environment where players feel both challenged and supported. It's not just about running through the motions. It's about building skills, confidence, and a love for the game. Whether you're a seasoned coach or just starting out, this episode is your playbook for success. Together, we'll unlock the secrets to making practice not just a routine, but the foundation of every athlete's journey to greatness. Because when we get practice right, we set the stage for extraordinary results, both on and off the field.
What we know about sport and anything in life, it takes a long time to get good at it. And there needs to be some sort of spark, some sort of love, some sort of idea of a compelling future to do the required work. And you've got a great insight. How often do you have to ask your kids if they played their video games?
That's my line.
I know.
I never have to remind you to play Xbox.
Because they love it. There's a spark there.
I said, you walk past the batting cage to go play Fortnite. Don't tell me how important this is. Again, like, my kids work hard. They do. But every once in a while, I'm sure I did too. It's easy to do what's easy.
100%. So what we need is to figure out the spark that we're trying to nurture and flame, as opposed to, this top down, I'm sorry, you're staying in this thing because you've got a future.
Because I don't want to do that either.
And they say, I hate this.
And the question always is like, what is the right level for my kid? We were talking about our own experiences earlier, and it's like, you want your kid to be on the best team possible, but then there also becomes, okay, is it developmentally appropriate where they're getting the play time? And then the second factor is, typically the better teams have what? They have better coaches. And the lower teams where you're playing more don't have, maybe you get lucky and they have a great coach. I'm just saying, generally speaking, the better coaches coach the better teams, and then it kind of filters its way down. So like a lot of the times when we're going through it, it's like, do you want your kid to be on a team where maybe their game time reps are not at the highest level because the other girls, boys, whatever, are just better than them and they're not there yet? But man, they're getting great work during practice. And all week they are getting great work. They're developing. And come weekend games, tournaments, they're coming off the bench. They have their role. They might not have the ball in their hand. They might not be the shortstop, whatever it is. But man, Monday through Friday, there's growth.
I love that. I really, at some point, they do need to get on the field to understand
it's
that
a balance.
Kind of tension.
Totally.
That type of, it is a balance. And let's remember, most kids are not going to go on and play pro sports. Most kids are not going to go on and play in college. Most kids are using their high school age or younger experience to learn about who they are, to learn about taking risks, to learn about what it means to be let down, what it means to be a great teammate and a terrible teammate. Like, there's so many life lessons. And let's remember, for the parent, my son is 16. He's a sophomore in high school. I've got 2 years left with him.
Yep.
I got this year as a sophomore and 2 years left.
Yep.
So after that, it kind of starts to fade away. Go to college, if that's in his plans. And it's a very precious time. So it's consistency over time rather than jamming stuff in only through one way where they feel small, but you feel big.
Yeah.
It's, you want to help them feel big and you maintain your bigness as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went through it with my daughter. She's gotten into basketball in the last year or so. And she wants to play on the best team, but she wasn't ready. Like her skills and experience were just not ready relative to the other girls in her age. And we were very clear with her. We got to practice more. You got to keep the ball in your hand more and you got to develop. And she wanted to just keep playing. She wanted to keep playing. And now she's going to be on a team where there's a lot of really good girls. And where is she on the hierarchy? I don't know. I have nothing to do with the team. I don't help. The practices I go to, the games I go to, I am pure dad. I'm not even helping a little bit. I have nothing to do with it, which is probably a good thing. And, but my point is, I don't know what the games are going to look like in the beginning. Hopefully she grows and develops a role and we'll let all that sort out. But man, the coach during the week does such a good job in practice with its skill development, but also she's very tough on them. She holds them accountable. She doesn't take any baby stuff. Like, she really coaches these girls hard. And like, what I like, she's a young female coach. She does a great job. So I say, you know what? If this weekend she only gets a quarter, a half in each game, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because Monday through Friday, she's going to get so much growth and development that at this young age,
there's a balance. There's a balance.
She can't not play at all. That's right. Not good for her either.
That's right. Yeah.
But man, I'll take good coaching and good weekly development over just roll the ball out. Yeah, you're going to play every minute, but no one's getting any better. I have no patience for that.
This episode of You Think is brought to you by Players Health, a company that believes youth athletes deserve the safest and the most accessible environments possible to play the sports they love. To break this down, I spoke with Tyree Burks, Players Health's founder and CEO, to hear the mission and principles of Players Health firsthand. We have a really special guest, the founder of Players Health, Tyree Burks. Tyree, thanks for joining us here on You Think. I'd love to just hear a little bit about your background, a little bit about starting and founding of Players Health, and really just why you saw a hole in the youth sports kind of world that you thought needed to be filled, and it is being filled by your work with your team at Players Health.
My background and where I grew up, the environment that I grew up in, played a huge part of me creating Players Health. I grew up in the south side of Chicago. Sports truly saved my life. And when I say that, like, I had an opportunity to choose two paths. Either it was the streets or sports. And fortunately enough, I chose sports. I was invited to come out to a youth football practice. I showed up early and I stayed late. And it kept me out of the streets. And so there's been two things that I've been obsessed with, the past, call it 15 years of my, professional career, as I've been focused on safety and I've been focused on sports. Like, I've just been obsessed with those things. I know what it feels like to grow up in an environment where safety is a luxury, and sports was a safe place for me. Through that experience, I had all these injuries growing up. I got 3 bulging discs in my neck. I ended up tearing my hamstrings, broken fingers, ligaments. Just playing sports and playing football. We didn't have athletic trainers growing up with the school I went to. And then until I went to the college level, I really didn't understand policies and protocols around how these things were managed. And so when I look back over my career, I ended up playing in the Canadian Football League for a couple of years, and I decided to hang it up. I started to reflect on my career and go, hey, half these injuries would have been managed a lot better when I was younger. Like, who knows what would have happened, but maybe I would have played a lot longer. And so I started to look at the impact that I wanted to make in my life and also in the world. And sports was played a huge role in my life. So I wanted to give back to it. And Players Health was my way of going about doing that. And so our mission has been the same mission since day one, which is how do we create the safest environment for an athlete to play the sport that they love? I think this is something that the world needs for our youth. And so we've been focused on leaning into creating those safe spaces.
Here at You Think, we want to bring value to you, the parents, coaches, the athletes listening, in everything that we do. Check out Players Health today and let them know Youth Inc. sent you. Now, back to the episode. Joining us on our latest episode of You Think is none other than the quarterback whisperer, Adam Dedeaux. Adam is a coach at 3D QB, where he specializes in elite quarterback training for top-tier athletes. With a deep understanding of mechanics, mental performance, and leadership, Adam has helped shape the careers of some of the NFL's best quarterbacks.
We dive into the right balance between skill development and gameplay, how to create an environment where athletes feel both challenged and supported, and the importance of building not just skills, but also confidence and a true love for the game. Adam shares why practice is more than just repetition. It's about purpose, progress, and making every rep count. Let's get into it.
Tom House shared with me about Tom Brady, and I wonder if you'll back it up or you saw it yourself. He said Tom Brady would throw a handful of balls and then lean over to, maybe it was you, but definitely Tom House, and say, what'd you think? And he purposely would throw a duck, something that was just substandard. And just substandard.
A little test. Did you see the bad ball?
Now, he wasn't throwing an awful ball, just barely detectable. And he was trying to suss out, according to Tom House, are you going to coach me? Are you really paying attention? Do you know the difference between good and great. And so did you have that experience with Tom Brady? And if you did or did not, that type of intensity is what separates people clearly. And so I'd love to hear your take.
That definitely is the nature in which he works. And go back to a story. It was a timing issue. He was going a little bit slower than he knew he was supposed to be going faster, but he went a little bit slower because we're thinking in rhythm and timing and everything like that. And yes, part of the nature in which I coach now was built on the fact that in that moment, you better be paying attention to every rep. There's no, and since then it's been pride our whole organization on, we're a feedback business. These kids, these guys, every rep matters. We're not, and Tom used to say, hey, pick the rule like odd numbers. Watch 3 throws and give a teaching point. Watch 5. That way it's not 1-1. You develop a trend and then you teach off of that. But I remember the first day I got exposed to Brady, wanted to speed up his foot strike. And he was just a titch slow. The next day he showed up and we were doing some pre-work and it looked faster. And I was like, hey, that looks good. And he goes, yeah, I know that looks good. And I was like, well, I mean, we're not out on the field yet. I hope this continues because you're right on cue with everything. And he was like, Adam, there's a reason I'm the best in the world. And I was like, okay. But you know what? He earned the right to say that. It didn't come from like a cocky or anything like that. It was like, no, he can, because he went home that night and he's like, I was in front of a mirror for about 90 minutes working on foot strike and working on all the movements that we had worked on the day before. And I was
whoa. That's a huge takeaway. We've been talking about this, Greg, the difference between individual work. So we were talking about like team practices for the team. Yeah. Like your coaches want to see a rhythm. You need to know how to work with your teammates and you're getting some skill development in context of the team. And then individual practice is for you. And you just took it a step further. You said, right, there's individual practice when the coaches are there. And then there's alone practice.
Yeah. The deep training, what you do when nobody's looking, the difference between the day and then the next day. I mean, amazing what he can do. And that's like just his mindset and what his commitment to his craft is. But I agree. I mean, Tom and I have talked about the power of deep training and how important it is, the stuff that you're going to do on your own outside of the structure of a team, where you can focus on, in terms of neuroplasticity and just sticking, muscle memory and the things that you're really trying to work on. The bulk of that is going to be done on your own. And we always tell our athletes, like, especially like the kids, it's like, hey, we get to see you once a week on Saturdays. If that's the only time you're working on this, I promise you will not get better. Not in the time frame you want. And everybody wants to, see results now. Then the deep training is going to be what's most powerful. What you take from today, being able to use it throughout the week at your practices, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes. And we always see, hear the stories when guys will bring their teammates, the wide receivers or the linemen, whatever, to practice. But it's always the guys who say, yeah, he's doing that goofy stuff off to the side on his own. And we make fun of him for doing the warm-up that, where you're doing the, everything like that. But it lets me know that they are thinking and doing the little things on their own that are going to make a difference for them. It's not just on Saturdays or Sundays when we see them for their training session, which I think in the long run, absolutely. I mean, you're building your 10,000 hours. It can't just be done in a training session.
Our baseball warm-up, our kids are walking like this, forward and backwards. We're holding the ball in our hand. People look at us like we're nuts, but knock on wood, our kids don't have shoulder problems.
Yeah.
Hold on. He makes them walk in perfect unison as well. So this
it is a little more casual, but they got to make sure their elbows are even. We got a lot of these. We get a lot of this when they get tired. We get a lot of that.
The wrists start to
We're not doing that.
Yeah.
but I want you to stay there for a minute. But instead of, yes, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, I mean, these are some of the greatest players of all time. There's a reason they are what they are. How do you take everything you just said about what you've learned from Tom and Drew, and at the highest level, bring us to that Saturday, Sunday youth workout?
Yeah.
Right? You're seeing a handful of middle school, high school kids coming to work with you guys. I'm sure there's an element where you are trying to teach them similar traits and lessons and whatnot that you would work with the more advanced high level guys. But then there's probably a developmentally appropriate manner in which to do it on a lot of different factors. So give us some insight, like what do those weekend youth training sessions look like, and how do they compare, similar or different to what you would do with the high level guys?
You talk to Tom and learn about windows of trainability and where we're working on their neurological system or we're working on their muscular system. But in terms of the buy-in, because it's no different. I think about the Saturdays, especially we get a new kid and, I usually have 5 to 6 coaches out there, very small group training to make sure that the kids are getting the feedback that they need. We don't like long lines because I don't think people will get better if they're sitting in a line of 5 or 6 quarterbacks. So we keep everything pretty intimate, but there's no difference in terms of when you're asking for buy-in from a kid. They want to know why. And we pride ourselves on having the whys behind it. And that's one thing that I think is a staple. Like if you can't explain it, I don't blame the kid for not having complete buy-in. You need to be able to explain the whys. And we do that every Saturday. We're going to do this because this. And, somebody say, we talk about, well, hey, we just had, Matthew Stafford this morning in this, why do we got to explain why? It's like, it doesn't matter because he doesn't know, nor does he really care that any of those guys were.
He wants to know how you're going to help me get
exactly.
better.
And I appreciate that. Like, yes, it's cool that those guys were here this morning, but, or yesterday or the day before, but it doesn't matter. It's still, I think it's healthy for the kids to question why. It shows to me that they're taking ownership of their craft, that they're being intentional about their work. And if they believe in it, if they believe in the reason why, there's a far better chance they're going to do it at a high level, or they're at least going to attempt to do it at a high level. So those Saturdays are built on, in the beginning, we have a process of warm up to throw, obviously, not throwing to warm up. We're going to work on our movement patterns, meaning movement, unrelated to any result. There's no ball involved. We're just working on their body. Much like, you wouldn't put a weightlifter under a weight that he can't handle. You have to condition his body to be able to do that. Similarly, we're working on movement patterns for these guys so they can feel what their body's doing. And for youth kids, that's important, especially as they start putting on muscle, because then their body changes. So giving them the time and the reps to feel their body in space, do what we're asking them to do, and really, manipulate them to make sure they feel what they're doing so that when they take the field, there's a familiar feeling to draw from. Give them that successful feeling of like, okay, I know what that feels like. I can sensationalize that. I can close my eyes. I can feel what I'm doing. And then when I go out to the playing field, these feelings start to become more familiar. And we tell them, hey, you may only feel it 20% of the time today. And the other 80% are going to feel, crappy. And your results aren't going to be good. But 20% is a win. And tomorrow might be 25% and 30%. And we're going to build it. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's why we stress like, hey, being here one day a week is not going to be enough. It's something that you got to do on your own.
The thing that sticks out to me the most that I love is when you put a kid at a team practice, it's so hard to hold them accountable to doing the little things. We'll take quarterback, for example, because all that kid is thinking, I don't care if it's Matthew Stafford or if it's a 7th grade boy. The only thing they're thinking at that practice is, my entire team's watching me. This needs to be a great throw, a great ball.
However I get it there.
Whatever. This ball's got to come out of my hand, tight, accurate, on time. None of these kids are looking at my feet. None of these kids are worrying about my front side. None of these kids are worried about my shoulder. Yeah. It is so outcome oriented. And I get it. Yeah. I get it. You don't want to throw a bad ball in front of your friends. You don't want to miss a layup. Like, it's just get the outcome I want in my team setting. I'm biased about football, obviously, but I think the best thing about football, especially at a young age, between what you guys are doing and just the setup of the game, it is the only youth sport going on today that you practice more than you play.
Oh, interesting.
Baseball,
yeah, good take.
You're practicing once, maybe twice a week. You're playing 7 games a weekend. Basketball, same thing. Volleyball, you'll go to these tournaments and you'll play 100 games in the weekend. There's 1,000 teams. You did 1 or 2 practices during the week.
Yeah.
Football is the only sport where you really can show the kids the value that we are going to practice more than we play. This is not just a quick little check the box and just go play a million games this weekend. And I think having the time to go out there and slow things down and learn the mechanics and you can spend 10 minutes worrying about, hey, do you like your top finger on the second lace? Do you feel more comfortable because your hands are a little smaller? Maybe moving them down to the middle. Your hands have gotten bigger. Maybe we need to. You're not doing that at a team practice. I'm the head coach. I can't spend 10 minutes with my quarterbacks asking them how they feel about where the ball. We got to go. Get the ball, take the snap. Here's the play and throw it, or I'll put somebody else in. Like, I don't have time. I think more parents need to seek this out. I think more in all sports. I think we can apply this conversation across the board to everything. There's not enough time on learning the mechanics and the fundamentals and the skills involved with these sports, because every coach is up against winning and every coach is up against a timetable saying, listen, I don't have all day. I got to get a team ready to go out and play a tournament this weekend. People need to seek this out. I wish it would come through their team coach. You might get it every once in a while if you're lucky, but there are alternative opportunities outside if you have access to it and you can do it. And if you can, it is so valuable.
For high school, I'll use volleyball in this case. It's only 4 hours a week of practice. We're not talking about a ton of practice here. In football, what is high school football practice?
I would say a normal high school football practice. They play on a Friday night. Monday looks some sort of like a introductory walkthrough and a weight room session for maybe 2.5 hours. Wednesday, call it another 2.5, 5, 7. Yeah, you're talking between Monday to Thursday, 4 days. You're talking probably 10 hours.
10 hours. So that would be hard to find an extra 1 or 2 hours on individual work. But if you can't...
This is probably an off-season thing would be my guess.
Mostly off-season.
The vast majority of kids going to work with individual coaches, especially in this sense, is an off-season. Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely.
In volleyball, you can afford to do it in season.
Same with baseball, right?
Yeah,
you can go take a hit. You can go do a hitting session on your own, because your baseball practice after school is going to be, you can do a 45-minute infield, you're going to do an hour in BP, and you're going to hit the showers and go home. There's just not that much to do. And now, more from my conversation with the team at Players Health.
What would you say has been probably the most impactful policy that you guys have consulted on, you've been part of the conversation, implementing and kind of outlining? Like, was it the concussion stuff? Is there something else? Like, where is there one conversation and big movement that you guys have been a part of that you feel like has made a significant impact on the youth sports landscape?
Yeah, I'd have to hyper-focus specifically around our abuse prevention policies. And the reason why I gravitate to that, and not that concussions are not a big deal, because they are, but an incident specifically around emotional, physical, sexual abuse within a youth athlete will change their life forever. And so I always like to say that at Players Health, our focus is to make sure that the transaction between an athlete and their sports organization, we want it to be positive. We want them to be depositing good things into kids and not taking things away from them. And so when we look at abuse prevention policies, we recognize that this is a life on the line. And so when we look at how we prepare and credential coaches, we need to make sure that these adults are actually been credentialed before they come in contact with an athlete. And what are the signs should we be looking for around bad behavior, around communication? What are the things should we be making sure that we understand? And then do we have a reporting mechanism in place so that the athlete has a voice, their parents, all of the folks around that are our eyes and ears? Do they now have a mechanism to communicate that this is happening? And then do we have preventative measures or temporary measures are being put in place to stop the bleeding? If we do find a behavioral issue with a coach or a staff member, have we removed them? Do we have an investigative process in place? Like, all that policy changes everything. And it limits the likelihood that something that will change a life forever from happening. We only want sports to be positive. But we recognize that there are experiences that kids are having that are negatively impacting their lives forever. So I'd say that that's definitely the number one policy. Health, of course, is a big focus, but I think on the safety piece, it can get bigger than that.
It's a shame how much is going on in the world of youth sports, but people like yourself that are passionate and companies like like Players Health that are very passionate about improving the experience for all people, adults, but mostly children in youth sports. My hats off to you, man. What you guys are building, the services and the policies you guys are implementing and creating are changing the landscape of youth sports for thousands of kids all across the country, and you guys should be applauded for it. So I appreciate you joining us here on You Think. I appreciate you sharing your vision, your journey, and look forward to continuing to work with you guys going forward.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Greg. Talk to you soon.
Here at You Think, we want to bring value to you, the parents, coaches, the athletes listening, in everything that we do. Check out Players Health today and let them know Youth Inc. sent you. Now, back to the episode.
So let's talk about feedback, because you highlighted the importance of feedback. In practice, whether it's team and or individual practices, the feedback loop is really the currency. And it was a great insight. Every third or fifth ball, then interrupt like what's happening with some feedback. Can you open that up a little bit more about what are some of the core principles you're working from, or some stories to highlight like what good looks like or what terrible looks like on feedback?
We probably give more feedback than most, but I do think it's valuable. I think that's why they're there, and I think a lot of what we're in the beginning, it's finding that mental approach, how we're going to go about our day and structuring our day. And then most of the feedback after that is going to be more physical.
But are you asking questions,
Oh, yeah.
or are you saying like better posture, or reach? Are you giving them instruction, or are you asking them what happened, what'd you see, what'd you feel, what'd you learn?
Great question. And it's all of the above, honestly. Certain athletes, I think it's getting a feel for how they're going to learn, and sometimes taking them in the direction you want to go. You got to ask those questions and teach through them. But to answer your question, are we giving absolutely. Your timing, foot strikes faster, posture, your head moved, your front side was soft, premature rotation, hold the front shoulder. Yes, everything. We're looking at every mechanical detail. Some guys can handle more. Some guys, it's more general themed. How'd that feel? Did you feel your lower half there? Did you feel what your arm did there? Did it feel easy? Were you in control? And then I get answers, and then I can kind of, all right, now let's try this.
So who holds the answers, the coach or the athlete?
That's a loaded question.
I want the athlete eventually to have the answers. So if they've spent enough time and I keep asking the right questions, I think eventually they're going to have the answers. In the beginning, I think it's my job to explain the general theme we're looking for. Call it, again, I refer back to a golf swing, kinematic sequencing. These things have to happen in this time frame, and it should feel like this. As long as they're informed on what I'm going for, right? And then the teaching points that go along with it, eventually they should have their own answers. And I remember, I'll use Jalen Hurts as an example. We spent some time together. He didn't say, you guys sent me something about trust and building with an athlete. And you know this as an athlete, like they don't trust easily, and I don't blame them, Sometimes they don't say anything for a week or two.
Especially Jalen. He's
exactly.
a quiet guy.
He's a quiet guy.
And you don't know what he's thinking. I don't know but whatever. It's my job to coach him. And then, he would just kind of shake his head. And then eventually we got to the point, he said, all right, I need to hear you less. Because I'm hearing everything you're saying. I need to start being able to apply it. You're like, okay.
That's really cool.
So he'd have a rep, and he's like, I want to hear you less today. And Drew would say that sometimes, like, give me a point every 5 throws or something, but the rest of it, let's just hold it to the end. Especially I'm with my guys, I'm working on something specific. Something
that you guys can maybe help me unlock is that we know from a performance standpoint, from a psychological perspective, is that we want the athlete to focus their attention externally and for the most part narrowly. So if you think about, there's 4 ways you can place your attention. 2 of them are internal and 2 of them are external. When your attention is external broad, it's like as a quarterback, you're picking up the big thing, like what's the whole field unfolding? And then you go to route 1 and you want them to narrow down to like the chin strap or the numbers or whatever, as narrow as they can get.
Yeah.
You have to go internal though. You have to think. That's part of the internal attention. You have to kind of feel your body. That's internal as well. And then quickly you want to get it out. Okay. So, or external attention. How do you, this is, I'm confused by this. When you ask a question, like, did you feel your front foot? Did you feel your rotation of your hips? You're asking them to go internal, and then you want them to think about flipping their hips at a certain point in the sequence while they're doing it so they can get better. But if they're not looking externally at the target and they're focusing internally on their hips, their mind is not in the right place. So I'm confused how coaches are able to help the athletes get to the external narrow focus and at the same time focus on hip rotation.
I guess, again, I'm not a quarterback expert. I think just to answer your quarterback, and you can give a little bit more of a quarterback perspective. I think to me, the heavy coach directives is very age. There's an age element to that, right? There's an experience component. The less experienced you are in the skill that I'm trying to teach you in, the more you're going to depend on me for external feedback, pointers, fix your front foot, pick up, control your front side. You're dropping
totally
your glove.
Get that.
Okay,
yeah, totally.
I think the hope in these drill sessions, I'll be curious what your take is, but my guess is in those individual drill moments, at a team practice, that's what individual period's all about. It's focusing on your craft to do your position, whether it's footwork in the run game or how to work under center drops, gun drops, play action, wide receivers catching the ball, whatever the skill set is. That's your time to just go internal. You're not relying on anybody else. You are developing muscle memory. You are laying down layers and layers in your neurological system of patterns, right? And you're just laying that down reps after reps after reps. The hope is when it's time that your focus has to be external, I'm the quarterback now, you are not gonna, in a game, sit there and say, okay, front side, keep it stiff, keep your shoulder slightly open, step just to the left of your target, make sure I'm delivering the ball. That needs to be, now in those individual sessions with Adam, you can afford to go internal there and really hyper-focus on controlling that, because the idea is the more you do it right, your body doesn't know how to do it wrong. And when it's time to just let it loose, that muscle memory and stuff will go from just time and time and time. So the training is internal. The execution in a competitive moment, you have to be an externally focused, and any of your inner workings need to just come out naturally.
Yeah, that's the bridge that, Adam, for you to sequence here or to address, is that when you're, like we've talked about this, Greg, a bunch, the way you practice is the way you play. And if you're doing the individual work, practicing, focusing on the internal, you'll likely play focusing on the internal, which is a disaster. We all agree with that for the most part. I mean, sometimes you can get away with things. So how do you help them? I'm thinking there's like every fifth ball, maybe it's like, how you doing? And then you're helping them get externally focused at the same time, or on a different cueing. But take us home.
Well, everything you said is right. And similar to, once you paint the picture of what you're looking for, and then we were to take them out to the field and you're struggling with it. It's okay. You're not there yet. I'm not expecting you to be there. 20%, just you feeling a little bit better is all we're looking for today. But as time goes on and you've put together, that's why those patterning periods are so important. That's where we're literally building your body,
that's what Greg
your stroke.
Is talking about. Yeah.
Unrelated to a ball or anything. We're just manipulating your body, giving you the flexibility and the mobility to do it. And, as coaches, we need to see what that looks like, because there is no ball yet. We're just getting the body prepared to do it, so that when we get on the field and we've built enough reps doing it, that it starts to trickle over. It starts to trickle into those workouts. And when we're asking the question, did you feel this? I want you to go back to the patterning period. Remember what that felt like? With that, because I'm telling you that looked right. Are you feeling that now in the space of throwing or, in performance? But when they're in a game, no, we're not thinking about any of this stuff. Now, when a guy leaves after an off season and he's been with us, okay, you've spent a lot of time with me. What 2 or 3 things can I do that fixes me if I'm ever having a problem, or I'm, what's most likely to be the thing I need to do better? And that goes back to Brady. He had the 3 notes on his, his wristband, his 3 mechanical notes in training camp: go fast, front shoulder, firm front side. So it was just what was most particular to him to make sure, like as a reminder, if he had a ball that was little, but like that's it. Keep it as simple as possible. But it's not nothing. It's just enough, like a good reminder. Oh yeah, just go faster. Sometimes going faster is all I need to do.
If you were to write those three on an athlete, would they be technical skills? Because that's what he just wrote, that you just described, technical skills for the most part. Or would you write, cut it loose, trust your stuff, more psychological stuff? Where would you, or like pick my spots, which is that narrow external focus? What would you write?
I think, again, it's specific to the athlete themselves. It's like if I've spent 6 months with them and I think about what were the most important 3 things that we talked about, it could very easily be the mental side. It could very easily be a trigger word that has nothing to do with mechanics. And it's just that trigger word that literally triggers a mechanical adjustment. Like stay aggressive, right? Or, if a guy's going slow, like, play free. I was talking to a quarterback who's getting ready to play a big game tomorrow, and he's just like, I just got to cut it loose. Like I got to cut it loose. And I said, I love it. Go out there and cut it loose.
What a great conversation.
What an ending.
Yeah, what a
great. You can
great.
just leave it right there, Adam. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, for sure.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Let's recap some of the key points from our discussion today. We discussed the right balance between skill development and gameplay, how to create an environment where athletes feel both challenged and supported, and the importance of building not just skills, but also confidence and a true love for the game. Adam shared why practice is more than just repetition. It's about purpose, progress, and making every rep count. Until next time, thanks for joining us here on You Think.